Hey, did you happen to see the most beautiful girl in the world?
This is my mother and father, and that's the Margaret, that the Margaret stories originated. When my mother and father got married in Lakeland, Florida in 1934, Daddy was getting dressed for the wedding and realized that he didn't have a bow tie. And Dave Miller, his best man, said, well, here, take mine. I'll be back in a minute. I'll get another one. Well, you know, where you gonna get a bow tie, back in those days? But Dave came back in 5 minutes and had a bow tie. And my father asked him, he said, how in the world did you get a bow tie? He said, I went out on the street. I stopped every cabbie. They all wear bow ties, and I bought one off of them. This is my grandfather and grandmother on my mother's side. Pop, as he was known to me, was a pharmacist in Lakeland, Florida. And he used to rent a house on the beach at Indian Rocks, which is near Tampa and Clearwater, for the month of August every summer from the time I was 2 until I was 16 or 17. And it was a responsibility of my brother and me that every morning we were to get out and sweep the walk, because they had the Australian pine cones that were about that big, but stepping on them barefooted was not a pleasant thing. Well, as you can imagine, 8 and 10-year-old boys don't always do what they're supposed to do when they do it. And one morning we had not swept the walk, and Pop would go for a swim every morning before breakfast. And he was walking down the little walkway, and he stepped on a pine cone and he hollers, damn! And he stepped back off of it, stepped on another one and said, double damn! And my brother and I ran and got the brooms, and we started sweeping, and we didn't neglect our chores after that. So my mother was a delightful person. She was spontaneous at times, and one Thanksgiving she came up to Greenville to visit, and she asked our 2 daughters, who were 16 and 13 at that time, if they'd take her to the mall. And they said yes, so they went over to what was Rich's then, it's now Macy's, but and they go over into the ladies' foundation garment section, and Mother walked up to the girl and said, do you sell lovable brassieres? And the lady said, yes, I do. What style? And Mother said, I don't know, this one. Judy's father and her mother, I tell everybody, Judy's mother had an infectious laugh, and she could laugh at other things as well as herself, and sometimes she did some things that were comical in the end. When after Judy's father had died, her mother sold the house and moved into an apartment in Greenville, and we went down to see her, and took our first daughter for who was just a few months old. And as we got to her apartment and rang the doorbell, she came to the door, and as soon as I walked in, she grabbed me by the arm and she says, I've got a problem and you've got to help, you know. And I said, well, what is it? And she said, there's a varmint in my bathroom and you've got to take care of it. And I said, what is it? And she said, I don't know. She said, but it was on the floor, and she said, I tried to pick it up and it wouldn't let loose of the carpet, and there was white shag carpet in the bathroom. She didn't put it there, it was there before she came. But anyway, so I go in the bathroom, and here's the trash can turned upside down, and you know, I'm trying to figure out what in the world could be under here. So I tipped it up, and here's this pile of Kleenex, you know, and I can't see anything. So I decided, well, the only thing to do is just attack it. So I reached down and grabbed it, and it didn't move. So I picked the Kleenex up, and it was a door stopper screwed into the floor. And she said, "Oh Lord, I didn't have my glasses on. All I could see was a black dot on the floor, and I knew it didn't belong there." A number of years ago, Judy invited her 2 nephews to come down to Atlanta to spend a few days with us. And Andy and Elliot were 8 and 10, about. And she took them out for lunch, and this is before the McDonald's and all of this, but it was a hamburger joint, and they placed the order, and when the boys had already sat down at the table, and Judy takes the food over there, puts it on the table, goes back to get the drinks, and she gets the drinks, and she comes back and she sits down, and she opens up her hamburger, and there's a bite taken out of it. And so she jumps up, she goes back up to the counter and tells the guy that somebody has taken a bite out of her hamburger. Well, he apologizes. He gives her another hamburger, and she goes back over the table, and 10-year-old Elliot says, "Aunt Judy, where'd you go?" And she said, "Somebody took a bite out of my hamburger." He said, "Oh, that was me." Oh, yes. Carolyn was living in Asheville, and was renting a house up on the mountain up there, not a big one, but she had a house that was very obscured. You couldn't see it from the road. But she was talking to me one day, and she said that she wanted to buy some Adirondack chairs, and asked me if where she could go, and I said, "Well, wait a minute." I said, "I happen to have a set of plans for some Adirondack chairs. Do you want to build them?" And she said, "Oh, I'd love to." So she said, "The deal's got to be that you can't do any of the work without me." She said, "I want to learn how to do this kind of stuff." So we spent a couple of months on weekends. She'd come down and we would work on them, and it was a great time because the two of us just really got a chance to really bond, so to speak. Well, she had them at her house up in Hendersonville, and she came home from work one day and they were gone. Well, she called the police. The police came out, made a report on it, and the chances of finding something like that are pretty slim. The next year, she bought a house in Asheville, and after she had gotten settled in it, she went out looking for some more furniture, and she went into one of these antique malls, or co-op type antique malls, and there are the chairs. And there were, we had pictures of them as we were building them, and they were stained. You could see the knots in the wood, the grain, everything. So it was not hard to identify them. She called the police, and it turned out the people that owned the booth were not there. The people across in another booth were manning it for them. And so the policeman said, "I can't let you take these until I get a hold of the booth owners." And so Carolyn decided that she was going to buy them because she was not going to walk away from them and hope to get them back later on, Well, she bought them, put them in her truck. That night, Asheville had torrential rains and flood, and that building got washed away. So if she hadn't done that, she wouldn't have those chairs, and she's still got them to this day.